Boston. Oh, yeah.
Good evening. I'm Albert Carnesale, the Dean of the Kennedy School, and on behalf of the school and the Institute of Politics, I want to welcome all of you to this event. This evening we celebrate the legacy of a man who's changed the city of Boston, physically, economically, and perhaps even more importantly, spiritually. Our speaker is the Mayor of Boston, His Honor Raymond Flynn. His public service includes 4 terms in the Massachusetts legislature, 3 terms on the Boston City Council, and 3 terms as mayor. Always a representative of the neighborhoods and the underprivileged, he's been a constant advocate for the homeless, for the schools, and for housing and for development in the areas that need it most. One of the greatest tests of an elected official is whether or not he truly represents not only those who voted for him, but all of his or her constituents. As mayor, Mayor Flynn has embraced all Bostonians. Indeed, by now, he may literally have embraced all Bostonians. When he took office in 1984, the city's schools and parks were in shambles. Police, fire, and health facilities were old and weary, and safe, affordable housing was virtually impossible to find. His 5-year capital improvement plan transformed the city's infrastructure, restored Boston's streets, facilities, and youth programs, and tied the economic growth of the downtown area to the city's neighborhoods, so no one would be left behind. And all this was accomplished while at the same time maintaining the city's bond rating of A. But the mayor has done more for Boston than improve the physical landscape. His achievements are, as often as not, seen in the intangible aspects of life in the city, in civic pride, and in the improvement of race relations in a city historically marked by racial and ethnic strife. Some words from Donald Gillis, the executive director of Boston's Economic Development and Industrial Corporation, illustrate the mayor's influence in the community. They also suggest that we might have to build a new wing here at the Kennedy School, because the words were, "I come from the Ray Flynn School of Government and Economic Justice, which calls for working hard every day to bring economic justice to every community in the city," close quote. Mayor Flynn brought his belief in the spirit of the cities to the national level when he served as president of the United States Conference of Mayors in 1991-92. He also served as co-chairman of the conference's task force on hunger and homelessness. Last fall, he was named national co-chair of the Clinton for President Campaign Committee, and as some of you may have noticed, that effort was successful. Recently nominated by President Clinton to be his ambassador-designate to the Vatican, Ray Flynn will have the opportunity to promote his vision of social and economic justice on an international scale. Of course, we'll all feel a tinge of sadness in his departure from Boston, because he brought to this area not only economic renewal, but spiritual rebirth. He's truly touched us all. Here at Harvard, where Mayor Flynn received his master's degree from the School of Education, and at the Kennedy School, where he has been and will continue to be a valued friend, we'll truly miss him. But we know that he will bring to his new post the same enthusiasm, the same concern for humanity, and the same ability to get good things done that he has brought to his city of Boston. So it's my great privilege to introduce to you the Mayor of Boston and the Ambassador-designate to the Vatican, His Honor, Raymond Flynn.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you. Thank you, Dean Carnesale, and welcome all of you from across the country. I understand we have a number of people coming back to Boston and Cambridge here, graduates of Harvard, and we're welcome you back and hope that you have an enjoyable, productive stay while you're in the city, in this area. It's an exciting time, lot going on, and it'd be fun to talk a little bit about it here tonight. I always look forward to coming over here to Kennedy School because it has been a place that has provided so many opportunities for people to be able to learn from others and learn from the great tradition of the Kennedy School and move on their way to bigger and better things in their careers. To those people who are going to be in Boston for the entire weekend, if you're not doing anything on Monday, I would like to invite all of you to join us in running the Boston Marathon. It's only 26 miles, and I'm sure you'd have an enjoyable time. You'd have a lot of fun. I'm glad the topic that we're going to talk about tonight is how we lead cities into the next century, because when I first got the invitation, I thought we were going to talk about diplomacy, world diplomacy, which of course is one of the major criteria of the new assignment that I will be embarked on with at the direction of President Clinton. And some people may say, what does really a mayor of a major American city have to do with being an ambassador to the Holy See, to the Vatican, which has one of the most incredible assignments that you could have? And I thought about it and how I would explain that to people and why I'm so excited about this particular assignment. And I guess I would say that it is really not so strange when you think about it, being an ambassador to the Vatican and the role that a mayor of a major city like Boston, particularly a city like Boston, has played in the formation of my political career and the formation of my development. It's a very diverse city, Boston. This is a very diverse community. We have some of the greatest institutions in the world right here in the Boston area. We have some of the greatest colleges, universities, medical centers, museums. Students from across the world are in our community all the time, and distinguished foreign visitors are in Boston regularly. We have the King of Spain, Taoiseach of Ireland, and ambassadors from across the world are here all the time, whether they be speaking at the Kennedy School or at Harvard or other institutions as well. So I would add that point because I want to talk a little bit tonight about my experience as mayor, and the question that is always asked of me, particularly more recently, is where do cities go? Or what is going to happen in Boston? I see my good friend Sheriff Rufo, a candidate for mayor of Boston as well here, and a lot of people are saying, how does the city go from here? Where does the city go from here? And when you think about it, here I was spending today, one eye doing my work and the other eye watching CNN, watching the court verdict, waiting for the court verdict in Los Angeles in the Rodney King trial. It kind of indicates the kind of scope of the challenge of being a mayor in a big city like Boston or New York or Chicago or Philadelphia or Detroit. And we gather in that kind of an environment. Even as I'm talking, it'll be important for me to certainly focus on this presentation, but I can't help but tell you that my eye will be just waiting to hear one of the police officers or see one of the police officers tell me that here we are, verdict has come in and everything stops and we get focused on that particular issue. I spent last Sunday from 6 o'clock in the morning to well into the evening, just visiting churches. I went to 5 church services, going around in the minority communities all across the city, just meeting people, talking to people, seeing what was going on, trying to, you know, deal with some of their kind of issues. And hear from people, hearing their thoughts, hearing their concerns. And really, if somebody said, what are the 10 most important things to do as a mayor in terms of leading your city, I could really minimize it to one, and that is really just being respectful to the people that you represent and deal with the issue of unity. The unity is the most important thing a mayor will ever do. It is the most important issue in a city. The racial healing and bringing people together and sharing thoughts and common ground, common concerns, and just working through those kind of issues is so very, very important. And I've learned, well, let me jot back to a little bit of time here, 1983. A similar time of this, and I'm reminded of it, because 1983 was the campaign for mayor of Boston. And Boston, of course, is one of the most political cities of any cities in the country. Certainly New York is a competitive political environment, but Boston really is one of those cities that is particularly competitive as well. As I recall that election, and I know the candidates are starting to gear up for this election now in 1993, 10 years later, and what are the issues? And the issues at the time were public safety and the economy and jobs, just like they are now. But instead of coming forward with an agenda whereby I said the number one issue is going to be law and order, and we're going to put more police officers on the street, which is important to do, of course, and which is important to do now. But I took an entirely different approach to that kind of situation. What I did was, in 1983, I announced for mayor in a public housing that had been taken over by the court because it was mismanaged and because of neglect. And people said to me, why did you announce for mayor of Boston in a public housing development where the political logic escapes me on that one? And when I was at the press conference, I stressed that the issue would be public housing and affordable housing in the city. Now, it did not appear as the number one issue or even one of the top issues in the mayor's campaign of '83. But my experiences and my gut reaction had indicated to me that, you know, people of all different backgrounds, regardless of whether they be students or young people just starting out, getting married, settling down, trying to buy a house, trying to afford the high cost of rent, whatever the situation was, affordable housing was an incredible issue. And when I announced for mayor, and I talked about it in a public housing development, people said to me, gee, I don't think he's really got a good, sophisticated political agenda, because of the fact that people who live in public housing don't vote in many respects, which is tragic, but that was the history up until that time. They certainly don't contribute money to a political campaign, and so what's the advantage, as opposed to some of the other candidates announced outside of a police headquarters and said, vote for me, I'm going to put several hundred more police officers on the street and law and order and crack down on drugs and crime and so forth. And from that day on, even though I was a dramatic underdog, there was nobody in the city to speak of that was giving me much a chance to win that election. I had very little money. I had no media support. There were no endorsements. The business community were not supporting me, and had no political support to speak of as well. And all those kind of traditional things that usually determine a political election were not going in my favor. But what I had was just this kind of gut neighborhood instinct for what was on people's minds and what was important. And so I focused on the issue of affordable housing. And from that day, to this present time, I've tried to focus on the issues that unite people, that bring people together, and I found that it is the most stimulating as well as the most healing thing to do. I've often said it. One of the first things that I said was that there are more issues that unite people than those narrow issues that divide people. And as a result of that, I was able to get coalitions of people coming together, working on issues of common ground, economic and social common ground. So when you think about it, even though that there are differences of opinion in world public philosophy and politics, it's clear that you can bring people together on these issues of economics and make and racial healing and make a big difference. So I hope that, I was listening to the program the other day, and it said, well, gee, what is, the people were chatting back and forth, and they said, I think the issues of civil rights, human rights, and racial concerns are becoming big issues again. And I stopped and I said to somebody who was there with me, I said, wrong. They've always been big issues. They always will be issues, and they will always be the most important issues in our cities. You never lose focus of that, because if you think you've solved those issues, if you think you've made progress, and if you think you've resolved the issue and it's behind you, that's when the mistakes are made. Because in a city like Boston or New York or Chicago, which is very diverse, which has a significant number of poor people, underprivileged people, frustrated people, angry people in many respects, you will always have that kind of need to continue to work every single day on the racial healing and the healing aspect and bringing people together. 1993 election in Boston and other cities is not going to be any different. We've got to attack those problems, those concerns, whether it be in this city or any other city. I recall just a year ago when the Los Angeles verdict came in on the Rodney King case, the first verdict. I was in the mayor of Los Angeles' office at the height of that, of the riots. And I said to Mayor Bradley as I was leaving, I was the president of the mayors at the time, and I said, what is the message that you would want me to bring back to our colleagues, the rest of the mayors? He said, Ray, it's very, very clear. He says, the issue is jobs and economic empowerment. People feel frustrated, they feel angry, they feel betrayed. They feel that their government, whether it be the national government or the state government, has really not reached out to them, is not on their side, is not helping them. It was funny because that time, that was last April, at that time Bill Clinton was just another candidate running for president. And I brought that message of the jobs, this controversy that's going on here, the president's economic jobs plan. That was an initiative that was launched last year by the mayors across the country. We identified over 4,000 projects across America that could get people to work immediately, not make work, but really serious jobs fixing up our roads, our parks, our playgrounds, our infrastructure, our bridges. And we presented a whole list of these various projects. And we brought that to the Congress' attention, and we brought it to the candidates for president, and Bill Clinton's attention. And as a result of that, and a lot of work on his staff and Bill Clinton's staff, it's really amazing, and it has really not been a lot of focus on it. But from that time, last April, from the time that Bill Clinton really started focusing on the jobs piece, and jobs became his issue as distinguished from the other candidates, as distinguished from President Bush, Bill Clinton started to move in the polls, and they never caught him. Nobody ever caught him, because the issue of jobs was one of those issues that was uniting, that could bring people together, and the message was directed at individuals. They felt that Bill Clinton at that time was talking to them. That's why it's so troubling, even what's going on now in Washington with this filibuster by the Republican senators. I think it clearly indicates to me that there is still a tremendous amount of out-of-touch feeling that is going on in Washington. And we just really are not getting enough people focused on those kind of issues of economic and social common ground. There isn't a grassroots groundswell of people across the country who are fighting hard enough for those kind of issues. Because if there's going to be any racial healing and unity in cities, the best social program to deal with that kind of a situation is a job. It's the best social program that we'll have in America is a job, because it provides an economic feeling of certainty in people's minds. They feel that their children and themselves, their families, do not have to resort to the kind of anger and frustration that we see played out each and every night on television across our country. So I just hope there that as this Congress here decides the President's jobs package and the so-called economic stimulus package, that they take mind of what's going on in America's cities, and they see what's happening with average working families, needy people. We have a lot of people out there that are hurting. The people really feel that nobody's listening, nobody's on their side. Today, for example, we had I saw the president on television, and he was talking about still fighting hard for this jobs bill. But I get the sense that everybody is getting worn down because they are willing to come to this kind of compromise position. Well, to me, it's really, compromise is the wrong word. It's the wrong approach. It's the wrong strategy, because this is not the time to compromise, because the president really has the support of the American people. He has the support. The people of this country are really on his side. What the problem is that the people have not communicated that feeling to the members of the United States Senate. This is typical politics that is being played down in Washington. And I think if the president holds out and continues to fight and takes his message directly to the people. You know, President Wilson used to say, public opinion decides political solutions to problems. Public opinion rules the world. And it's true. President Clinton has enormous ability to reach people with his message. And I hope that he just doesn't keep an inside game in Washington, and he actually gets out there and meets with the American people and encourages them to get involved. Here we are here in New England area. We have 3 United States senators that really are hard hit by this economy here in the Northeast. The senator from Vermont, senator from New Hampshire, senator from Maine, and Senator Chafee from Rhode Island. And here we have 3 senators really that should, in fact, be voting in their constituents' economic interest. And unfortunately, every Republican senator is voting against the president's jobs package and president's jobs plan. So I just hope that, you know, as we prepare, trying to put these 2 issues together here if I can. As in one hand, we're waiting for the verdict to come in Los Angeles. I'm reminded of what Tom Bradley said to me, that the #1 issue to deal with in terms of the stability of a city is jobs. I'm looking at what I have focused most of my energy on, bringing people together on around race and economic and social common ground. And then I hear this debate raging in Washington, and it's a question of whether or not the president's jobs package is advised or ill-advised. It to me indicates that if we put all these pieces together, the only logical conclusion is that the Congress ought to pass this jobs bill and get people back to work. That's what the critical issue is. So I just wanted to share with all of you as I leave a job that I enjoyed very, very much. I loved being mayor of this great city. But just really hope that as we discuss the issues in Boston and other cities, that there will be critical issues, public safety and health care and all those issues. But in the final analysis, the #1 issue for a mayor to deal with is the unity of the city, is making sure that people believe that the city is business is conducted at a level playing field, that bringing people together, that racial division is unacceptable, And sometimes you offend people by taking sides on particular issues, but it is so very, very critical, and it will be the issues of the 90s for America's cities, because in many respects they are tinderboxes. They are subject to a lot of uncertainty and a lot of turmoil, but I think that you can hold on to your city. I think historians, or at least I suspect, historians will be very, very kind and generous to Boston over this past 9-10 years, particularly around the issue of racial unity, because we've worked at it very, very hard. There is nobody that I would bring into the city government in Boston that would provide any kind of level of encouragement for racial division. The police commissioner of the city, I see Deputy Superintendent, served our city very, very well, Echeverria. He would testify to the fact that Police Commissioner Mickey Roach is one of the fairest, one of the most decent police officials that you will ever find, and racial harmony has always been his central issue. And so we'll hear a lot of discussion about big issues and important elections, but my experience, 10 years as mayor of this city, president of the mayors of this country, the number one issue, as far as I'm concerned, is the number one challenge for any American city, and that is keeping the city together and making sure that people understand that division will not be accepted, will not be tolerated, that the mayor, the police commissioner, everybody will deal with that issue as forcefully and as effectively as possible. So I have mixed emotions about leaving as mayor. I think we're facing some real, potentially positive times for America's cities. Put it this way: over the past 12 years, in terms of the relationship between the cities and the White House, could not have been worse. It was a tragic time for America's cities in terms of the federal government ignoring America's cities. I think Bill Clinton is clearly committed to making cities competitive, healthy, vibrant again. I think Hillary Clinton is doing everything that she possibly can to bring dignity and respect to working families and needy people, particularly in the area of health care. I think we have an extraordinary administration committed to social and economic justice. But where the action is going to be in the next 4 years, the action is going to be in America's cities. But I really think that we now have an administration in Washington that is going to focus on America's cities, but it's going to need the grassroots support and the mobilization by the people of our country, because you still have an intractable, special, powerful interest in Washington that is, continually fights for the status quo. And we need change. We need change in education. We need change in health care. We need change in making sure that poor people are given a piece of the economic pie. And those are going to be the issues. Those issues of social and economic justice are going to be the big issues for the next 4 years. And I just think that based on the philosophy that we've had here in Boston fighting for social and economic justice, I hope to be able to take that philosophy to Italy with me, to Rome with me. And that's one of the things that the President said to me when he invited me to join the administration as United States representative to the Vatican. He says, "Ray, you've dealt with the issues of conscience, you've dealt with the issues of social and economic justice in your city, cities across the country. I want the United States as a government to be recognized across the world on those issues as well." And I was proud to hear him say that you're the one person that can pull that off on me, because you have the political skills and you have the commitment based on your own experience to do that. And now it's your responsibility to go across the world and let other people know how the Clinton administration, how the people of the United States feel about whether it's the situation of AIDS in developing countries in Africa, or whether it's the job discrimination problem in Northern Ireland, or the situation of child prostitution in Thailand, or whatever these situations are, these issues of conscience and justice, social and economic justice. I'm really looking forward to a new challenge representing the President and representing the people of the United States, representing you as the ambassador to the Vatican. I see it as an incredible opportunity, representing the most powerful country in the world, in its president, to the country, to the state that has one of the largest or one of the most powerful moral forces in the world, namely the Pope and the Vatican. And I just think that based on those two unique forces, we can really work together for social and economic justice. So I'm really looking forward to the challenge ahead. Let me conclude with those several comments and remarks, and thank Dean Carnesale and John F. Kennedy School of Government for their incredible contribution to our city and to our area. We've been very, very fortunate to have this great school here in our community. I'm proud to say that a number of the graduates of this program have served in city government in Boston and elsewhere, and they have brought those same kind of issues of care and concern, issues of social and economic justice to our neighborhoods. And I think in large respect, one of the reasons why we're able to hold on to a great American city, because not only do we have enlightened, bright people, but more important than that, people who care, people of compassion. So let me open it up with questions from the audience. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. We've got some microphones here. We've got a limited amount of time, so I'd appreciate if people would identify themselves. There's one there, one here, and one here. Try and make them questions and try and keep them brief. As you might expect, the mayor now has two jobs, the mayor and ambassador designate. She's on a pretty tight schedule, but we have about 15 minutes for questions.
I'm Louise Drücker from the Executive Alumni Council at the Kennedy School and working with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees currently in Brussels. I'd like to congratulate you on your appointment, and as you said, representing the most powerful country before the most powerful religious entity in the world, the Vatican. I understand President Clinton's policy includes 2 points which have a very important message out there in the world. One is concerning abortion, and another is concerning development issues. And I wonder what would you be in your brief, in your discussions with the Vatican, who has moved very forcefully into the area of social justice, development issues, migration issues. In fact, very recently in New York, there has been a very significant round table organized in the Economic and Social Committee of the UN, which has been widely attended and has been a great success. And what we hope, whether you can disclose some of the job descriptions, some of the items on your agenda in your beginning of discussions with the Vatican.
Well, you know, I have not even had briefings. I haven't gone before the Senate for confirmation. I'm already sounding like a skilled diplomat here, avoiding the questions. No, I haven't really had, you know, I have some personal thoughts and strong feelings on issues. Certainly, I don't think I'm going to be able to change the Pope's mind on moral issues any more than I'm going to be able to change Bill Clinton's mind. No, I don't think I don't even think it is my job to try to change anybody's position. I think what their mind on moral issues. I think what my job will be, you mentioned issues such as development. The Catholic Church is one of the largest providers of health care in the world. I met yesterday with Dr. Jonathan Mann, who is the executive director of the World Health Organization, and we had a conversation yesterday. I think he was quoted actually in the paper this morning or yesterday, and saying how important a role the Catholic Church plays in healthcare across the world, whether it be in Africa or Central America. And at the same time, the United States is on a firm course of providing health care for people regardless of income or background. So you have an incredible opportunity of bringing these two extraordinary powers together to deal with the issues of AIDS, hunger, homelessness, whether it be here in this country or across the world. So again, I will see my role as a representative of the President and the people to continue to build those kind of bridges on social and economic common ground, like I did here in Boston. And so what people would say, what is the skill that you bring to the Vatican as a diplomat? Nothing from a standpoint of experience as a world diplomat, but a lot of experience in terms of bringing people together in the neighborhoods of the city. Boston was racially divided, as Dean Conoseo pointed out in 1983. Not only is Boston united, but we were able to build bridges between the neighborhoods in neighborhoods to each other and the neighborhoods to downtown. So, in the economic power of the city. So I think we're going to see an entirely different approach used by the United States government, and that is reaching out to the Vatican around issues of social justice and issues in areas where the country has generally not gone. So I'm really looking forward to it, and I have to tell you, I've not had the briefings by the State Department, but I expect to be completely versed, briefed, and carrying out the message of the President, hopefully by the first week of June. Thank you. Yes.
Would you get by the microphone? Well, nobody else will be able to hear you, so it would help if you would. Why is this matter? Is this a matter of principle? I mean, maybe I'm missing something. Go ahead. Go ahead. If we keep it brief, I think it would be.
I would like to address the issue from my own personal experience as to the character of the mayor and what has been the greatest contribution that he has made as it has impacted my life, because it's significant and it's important. And specifically, I first happened to meet the mayor on July 4th, 1989, and the mayor was standing behind a tree, and it was at Faneuil Hall, and he was looking across the street, just by himself on the City Hall, looking to see if he couldn't help a person in some distress. In other words, he's a brave individual, and he doesn't hesitate at any minute to get a person involved in a situation in his presence. That was a big impression that I had of him. Very nice. The next time I saw the mayor, it was on the birthday of the Blessed Virgin, and significantly as close to that. The second mass I attended, and I had the idea of going there because it meant a great deal to me personally that I had entered the church. And in going, I happened to meet the mayor. He's a very spiritual person, and very often goes there, and took pictures of the Vatican. I have only on this it's been told to me, and the mayor can confirm, it is true that when he went to Russia, he was given a picture by the people, and he had wanted to have the picture. The government of Russia said he couldn't take the picture with him. Apparently, it's determined that it's from the people, and therefore appropriate. I thought that was another indication of the strong character and wisdom. But the thing that has meant the most to me,
Okay, well, please, because
I would like to suggest in his reading that has meant a lot to many people, is the fact that he has constructed in the Catholic prayer area a fountain and grass. And I happen to have had the experience on two occasions of being there.
please, it's being unfair to other people. Please be brief. Because most people can't hear you. Please be brief. Please go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Hello. My name is Danielle. I'm a student here at the Canyon School, and I've been working for the Safe Neighborhoods program for a few months. I think you've been wonderfully modest tonight in speaking about these issues of unity in the city and cooperation and very productive cooperation, but not identifying your role. You've been a wonderful facilitator in these years in bringing these people together, and you'll be very sorely missed now that you're leaving. What would you have the candidates, the future mayor, the people who've been involved in these productive collaborations do to keep that unity going now that you will no longer be here?
When I first was elected, I don't know, I hesitate to give people advice, particularly other politicians or other candidates advice. Only when asked I will give it. But I just think that be yourself and try to identify with people as in a personal way. Tip O'Neill says all politics is local. I believe all politics is personal. And whether there was this lady here that I met, I don't recall meeting her, but whether it be her or other people across the city, and just treating individual people with respect and with dignity and just that kind of personal touch. I know it's hard, but I think a lot of political leaders are discouraged from doing that because they just think that the community is too big and you can't reach people. I don't mind telling you, there was a poll taken by the Boston Globe one time, and it said that almost 50% of the people in the city had, met me personally. Do you remember that poll? Well, I was very disappointed with that poll because I really thought, and I don't want to sound like I was, I'm more important than what I am. I just thought that I had met all the people of the city of Boston several times. And I think you can do it. I mean, that's what you ought to strive for. A politician really ought to, Boston of city, you should be able to reach the people if you really work at it. Now, admittedly, 17 hours a day for the last 10 years is a lot of work. And, I'm not suggesting that we ought to measure the next mayor on the basis of somebody who is willing to work 17 hours a day for the next 10 years. But I just think that the personal touch is so very, very important. And people will see that in this campaign. I said on, Bobby, in one of the interviews, they said, who is going to win the next mayor's election in Boston? I said, it's the person who works the hardest. And it's no more complicated than that. Any one of us can be very successful in politics if you're willing to work hard and you have that relationship with people that they believe you. That's what it's about. You don't have to agree with people on all the issues. As a matter of fact, I've been involved in more issues that the overwhelming majority of people do not agree with me on. But as long as they believe that you believe what you're doing and you're a fighter and you're honest and you will do the best for them, they will go halfway with you. And it's no more complicated than that. So it's hard work. That's the secret of politics today. It's not how well you can articulate the issues that are most favorable on the minds of the majority of voters. It's on how hard you work and whether or not you're going to be there for them and give them a straight answer, try to help them, whether it's cleaning a pothole, fixing up a pothole, cleaning the street, working with kids in the school. It's no more complicated than that. And I like to think that in the city that we have brought together an administration that is committed to that. And even when I leave, it will be very difficult for the next mayor to come in and try to unravel all of that, because in many respects, the book has been written about that, and I think that's what the next mayor is going to have to do, be completely open, accessible, and be available to the people of Boston's neighborhoods, and all the people of Boston's neighborhoods. And you can't just pick or choose one or two neighborhoods. It has to be the entire city. Thank you.
Right, we'll do these two, but they have to be very brief, and because we're already behind. If you make a brief question, then right there.
My name is Sean Donovan. I'm a student here and also at the architecture school. I wanted to ask you a question about the relationship between cities and suburbs. A lot of people have been saying that over the last, 40, 50 years that the relationships have changed so much because the city has become a metropolitan area rather than just a city, and that the city government structure has not changed along with it to take account of that. How do you feel that city governments need to change in order to try and relieve some of the school problems, particularly that come from the relationship between cities and suburbs?
I'm not sure so much that the cities have to change, but I just think a number of political people have to start appreciating how important cities are, not only from a political point of view, but from an economic point of view. Boston, for example, is really the economic engine that drives this whole economy. We have a population of 600,000 people, but the population more than doubles each day because of all the people from the suburbs that come into Boston and work. And yet at the same time, we have a city that is, thriving from the standpoint of culture and universities and colleges and medical centers. And there just really isn't a recognition or an appreciation of that unique role up at the State House or state houses all across the country. And it's a battle that cities have not been successful thus far, pointing that out. Let me give you, sometimes giving an example is the best way to do it. You were all around for the tall ships. Well, the tall ships in Boston, 1 week, 6 days actually, brought in 6 million people to Boston. It was a remarkable event. 6 million people came into our city. In that week, $40 million, $34 million was generated in taxes that went up to the State House, in various taxes, whether it be meals tax or hotel or parking or restaurants or whatever it was, clothing, any kind of taxes. $34 million went up to the State House that came directly from the city of Boston. Now, the state, to host, it was a Boston event, but the state, to help host that event, spent $4 million. Pretty good rate of return on your investment, I'd say, in any definition. 34, you paid out 4. Boston, on the other hand, the host city, spent $3 million for services, police, fire, public works, ambulance service, whatever, public celebrations. And we received back less than $300,000 in taxes. Now, I say the tall ships event, but it could well have been the Phantom of the Opera or any kind of event that goes on all the time in Boston, because we're a community that generates an enormous amount of money, as does New York, as New York City does, as Los Angeles or San Francisco or any of these other cities. And yet at the same time, they receive very little money back from the state government. It's not very well known, but cities really are the economic engine for these states, and tragically, a lot of the voting power has moved out of the cities and moved to the suburbs, and that's the reason why the voting power is with the suburbs and not with the cities. And so what you have in the cities, you have the centers of economic activity, and you also have communities that have a tremendous number of needy people. So it's really a question of whether or not you're finally going to get, or you're going to get, people in state houses, you do now in the national government, understanding, respecting the importance of cities. Something that we've been fighting for. I think the message came forward in this past national election. Let me just make this point, last point. In this past election, and Bill Schneider's very capable national correspondent, wrote this article in the Atlantic magazine, and he said that the voting power now resides, this was a year ago, resides in the suburbs. And I wrote a competing argument article, didn't get published, but still I had it out there. And I said that the cities, in a three-person race, with Mr. Perot in the race, the cities held the key to the White House. And when you think about it, Ross Perot got 20% of his vote, and Bill Clinton, because of the vote that he got, the plurality that he received in America's cities, won the national election in America's cities. And Bill Clinton is aware of that. But cities are getting stronger. And it's up to mayors to make sure, in cities, people didn't vote for national office because nobody running for national office offered them anything. And Clinton offered them an agenda. And that's the reason why people came out to vote in America's cities this past election. So, if you give people a good candidate and you give them a good platform, they'll vote, and they'll come out to vote. It's very clear to me that the minority community was very decisive, a very decisive vote for Bill Clinton in 1992, as were the Catholic vote was very, very decisive in 1992, and maybe that's the reason why I'm going to the Vatican.
Great. The last question.
Your Honor, I'm David Gordon from the Graduate School of Design. You spoke very eloquently of the social and economic changes you'd facilitated during your administration. Could you tell us 2 or 3 things of the great physical changes that have happened in Boston over the last decade that you're particularly proud of?
I'll tell you, when I grew up in this city, lived here all my life, I remember played a lot of sports, played professional basketball. But I recall as a kid looking at the physical conditions of our parks and playgrounds. It would be an ordinary kind of thing, whether you'd be over here at Ringer Playground in Brighton, or Columbus Park in South Boston, or Carter Playground in Roxbury, or Almont Playground in Mattapan, or wherever you would go, Orion Heights Playground. No matter where you would go, the parks and the playgrounds were in horrendous condition. Right now, I can say without any fear of contradiction that the parks and the playgrounds in Boston are better than any city in America, because we have focused a tremendous amount of attention, maintenance, supervision in those parks and those playgrounds. And so that's something that meant a lot to me because of my recollections of a kid, and I just hope we're able to maintain those parks and playgrounds long after I'm gone. About a month before I took office, I was just elected, I received this report about the Boston City Hospital. Most municipal hospitals, in this country have closed. And I got this briefing by prominent members of the business community in Boston. And they told me that the Boston City Hospital was on the verge of losing its accreditation. It would have to close because there was no way financially that hospital should remain open. And I'll be honest with you, they made a lot of compelling, convincing arguments financially why the hospital should be closed. There was no way I could argue with it. There's no way whatsoever. I asked a question that I thought went to the core of the problem. I said, okay, what happens, how many people that use the Boston City Hospital don't have health insurance? Oh, about 50 to 60% of the people who use the Boston City Hospital don't have health care. And I asked the question that you would ask and anyone would ask then. Well, where do these folks go? Well, we just didn't figure that one out quite yet. Maybe some of the private hospitals would absorb them into the private hospitals. Well, the private hospitals do like 2, 3, 4% of their care is free care. And so that was not going to happen. So I said, look, the question here is not whether or not the hospital is going to remain open or closed. but how we're going to be able to build a new hospital, because the hospital was so old and obsolete. It was 135 years old. It was built by former mayor of Boston, James Michael Curley, and it had to, you either had to tear it down or build a new one. Well, next month, we will be building a brand new state-of-the-art medical hospital in the city of Boston. And it's something that, and it's a real, I appreciate the support. It's something that was not based on economics, whether or not to keep the hospital open or build a new hospital. It was based on what we felt in our gut. We just went ahead and built it, and I'm still not out of the woods how we're going to finance it over the years. I'll leave that to the next mayor. But I'll guarantee you they'll find out how to keep it open, how to finance it somewhere, somehow, but it's going to be open, and poor people and needy people are going to get the best quality health care of any city in America. And because of that came from a commitment from the people of the city. So that's number two. The parks, you asked for some tangible. Parks, the hospital, and the other one is, the third point, a physical thing. The average age of fire equipment in the city of Boston was 14 years of age. We replaced all our fire apparatus. So it's all brand new fire apparatus. We opened fire stations, have the highest number of firefighters in Boston than any time since Proposition 2.5, the tax limiting proposal. And last year, these things don't get a lot of attention, but I'll tell you, I have fun thinking about the contributions that we've made in the city. Last year, we had the least amount of multiple alarm fires in Boston since the early 1930s. We had the least amount of casualties, firefighters or civilians that were killed in fires in Boston's history, or at least since the early 1930s. What does that have to do with it? Well, when we reopened, reactivated, built new police stations or fire stations, that means that when you ring an alarm to get fire apparatus or police officers on the scene, they responded in the shortest period of time in Boston in many, many decades. That saves property, that saves lives. State-of-the-art equipment. The best equipment of any fire department in the country is right here in Boston. So those are three things that I would point to. There are others. You know, certainly the race issue that I pointed out to, but I know you want something more tangible than that. I'll give you the three specific things: the hospital, parks and playgrounds, and the equipment of our fire stations and fire apparatus in Boston, second to none in America.
Thank you. Well, I know you all want to join me not only in thanking the mayor, but for appreciating not only his hard head that he acts on, but also the soft heart, and to wish him Godspeed in his new assignment. Thanks so much. It's really great. No, it really is a time. Bravo!
Got the color of Ireland. that's a good thing.
Hello, hello. I have a question.
Now, once you've died, if it's